Welcome to this Wednesday surprise in 5 minutes with KeRusso. I want to share something with you this morning if you're on this quest to understand the Gospel of John. One of the things I asked you to do was to, as you read it, to focus on how Jesus interacted with people. Now, that really is something that has a lot of blessings to it. It's easy to read the Bible, any book of the Bible, and read these stories of people and to kind of see them as kind of fictional people, as flat characters on a page. And we don't really understand and have a hard time relating to them. But these are real people. They have feelings and emotions and experiences just like you and I have. And if we were to take time to pause a little bit and just think about them, we might find that we have a lot in common with them. And so I asked you to think about this woman that Jesus met in John chapter 4. That's where her story is. And to just kind of give her some thought. And what I want to do with you is I want to read for you a story. It comes from a book I wrote a few years ago. The name of the story is When God Speaks, Will You Hear? And I wrote it under a pen name KeRusso. Now that's the backdrop to how I come up with this name, 5 Minutes with KeRusso, for this YouTube channel. I want to share with you this story and see what you think about it and see how it compares to what you were thinking as you considered this encounter that Jesus had with this woman and how he interacted with her. It's a different rendering of the story. Obviously, it's not going to be what you're going to read in the Bible word for word. But I think you'll find it's a credible reading, and it gives you some ideas into what this encounter would have been like on that day, and maybe give you some thoughts to how Jesus might interact with you. You might even find that this woman has some traits that are similar to traits that you have or life experiences that you have. And even if you're a man, maybe you can relate to this woman. So let me read the story. I do need to tell you that this is going to be more than 5 minutes. But if you'll take 15, 20 minutes, I believe it'll be worth your while. And it just might help open up some other stories in the Gospel of John for you. So let me read for you the story. Who can say what childhood dreams this little girl had as she grew? Like every little girl, she had big dreams. From her childhood, she had heard great things about God. She had heard great stories about when this God had spoken to other people in ancient times. Perhaps she dreamed of a time when he would speak to her like he spoke to them. Would that not be a wonderful dream to have come true? Perhaps one day she would hear the voice of God speaking to her. When do childhood dreams fall by the wayside? When do children give up their dreams and exchange them for the reality of their lives? Is not life cruel as it steals away one childhood dream after another? This little girl would grow into a woman and live among people that were hated and despised. This woman and her people were used to being treated as trash. They received that hate and returned it in full force. Because of the hatred, there was strength in her people that came naturally to her. She could care less what people thought of her. While others looked down on her, she held on to a belief that she was good. She, just like her people, would be a survivor. Her dreams would become her reality and her life would turn out good. There was one special dream this woman had as a child. It was the dream of every little girl as they grow into womanhood. She dreamed of falling in love and marrying the most wonderful man in the world. She and her true love would marry and have children and live happily ever after. This was every little girl's dream, and it was her dream. One day, that special day came. It was the day of her marriage. It was the day that her special dream was to become reality. Perhaps her dream started out that way, but it was not a happily ever after marriage. It ended too soon for reasons that no one now knows. It left her with a broken heart and a wounded spirit. Were her dreams of happily ever after cast aside? Not hardly. She was a survivor. Surely this God would give her another chance at love. And that opportunity did come. And then it too ended. There was another marriage which ended, and another one, and another one. This tragic woman's story became shrouded in darkness. Her dreams had been shattered by life. Something terrible was wrong with her. She surely must be cursed. The God she had dreamed about as a girl seemed distant and silent. Could he not hear her cries to him? Perhaps it was true that she was trash. Why would the God of the universe care about someone like her? Why would he listen when she prayed? Why did she ever think that he might one day speak to her? This little girl with dreams had grown up into a disillusioned, lonely woman. This lonely woman needed to be loved, but there was no one to love her. How would she survive? She settled for someone who would just let her live with him. He did not care enough about her to marry her. He did not love her. To him, she was just a slave, a servant. She did not like this, but at least she was off the street. She had a place to sleep and food to eat, if not a place to be loved. But then what good is love when you are hungry and alone? She no longer dreamed. Women like her could not afford to dream. Though the dream may be sweet, one always has to wake up to reality. When dreams are crushed by reality, the pain becomes too much to bear. No, dreams were not for her. One day, she woke up and went through her day as usual. It was a day that held no particular promise of being anything other than hard and long. One chore she hated was the drawing of water. When you live among a poor people, you walk to a well to draw water. It was a long walk to the well, but it would be even longer on the way back under the weight of water she would carry on her shoulders. As she walked to the well, she passed a group of strangers, a dozen men. She knew who they were, or rather from where they came. They were people from the other country, the country that despised her people. And so they despised her too. They did not speak to her, nor did she speak to them, but she could see the hatred and spite in their eyes. How dare they look at her in such a way in her hometown? She had almost forgotten about them when she came to the well. To her shock and disgust, there was another man sitting at the well. Another man from that other country? Where did all these enemies come from on the same day? What was going on? She determined to just keep to herself. She would draw her water in silence and then walk and head back home. That is what she would do. What was that? The stranger said something to her. Surely not. Men from his country don't talk to women from her country. But he did speak, and he spoke again. What did he want? Was she safe? Should she just drop her water jar and run away? No, she could not do that. He spoke to her again. What did he want? He wanted her to give him some water. Was he crazy? Why should she? Who did he think he was? He kept speaking to her, and she could not be silent. Quite unexpectedly, she was drawn into talking to this man. Please let me be quiet. Let him be quiet so I can go home and do my chores for the man who does not love me, she thought. Now he was offering her something. What? Now he was offering to get her some water. Why would he do that? How would he do that? He was a stranger passing by, and he had nothing to draw water with from this deep well. He did not make any sense. Not only did he offer to get her some water, he offered some special kind of water. Was he delusional? Perhaps he had escaped from some asylum. Surely he was crazy, but he did not look crazy. He did not act crazy. In fact, if he were not from the other people, she might be willing to talk to him. Was he ever persistent? He kept on trying to get her to talk. Why did she even bother to talk back? Why couldn't he just leave her alone? Why couldn't he just let her draw her water, excuse me, and go do her chores for the man who did not love her? Wasn't her life bad enough? What did he just ask? He wants to meet my husband. Who was he to make such a request of her? She would not stand his interfering in her life. Why did he have to ask her a question that caused pain to rise up within her heart? All she wanted to do was draw water and go home and do chores for a man who did not love her. Oh, how her day had turned into one of agonizing pain. How did all this come about so suddenly? Who was this stranger? She did not want to talk to him anymore, so she just quickly said under her breath that she was not married. After all, it was the truth. She owed this stranger no explanation about the painful details of her life. She certainly was not going to share her shattered dreams with a stranger. You're right that you have no husband. In fact, you have had 5 husbands, and the man you live with now does not even love you enough to be your husband. Has she heard right? What did he just say? How could this stranger know her story? She did not know him. He did not know her. She searched his face, looking for some sign of familiarity. Perhaps had met once long ago or met in passing recently. No, he was not familiar. How did he know these things about her? She never talked to anyone about these things. They were too painful. Who was this man? I am the one you've been waiting for. I am the one who speaks for God. Did she hear right? She had heard stories about the one who would come to her people and speak for God. Her people had longed for that day, but had long since given up any real hope of that person ever coming. And if he did come, why would he speak to her? Was this really that man? How else could he know these things about her? Everything was a jumble in her mind. She no longer knew what to say. And suddenly, those 12 men that had passed by her earlier showed up again. They were with this man. They looked like the kind of men who would travel with the man who spoke for God, though she was not really sure what such men would look like. This must be the man who would speak for God. It could be no other. God was speaking to her. She did not know what to do. What should she do? The only thing she could think to do was run back to town and tell everyone who was at the well. And immediately she left her water jar and ran. She ran into town screaming for everyone to come. The people in town would surely think she was crazy. After all, why would they listen to her, a woman who had been married 5 times and now lived with a man who did not love her? Who was she to tell them anything? Why would they believe that God would speak to her? The townspeople heard her screams. They were not sure what she said at first, and then they weren't sure about what they heard. What was this woman babbling about? The man who speaks for God is at our well. This was impossible. But someone was out there. Someone had gotten this woman all excited. They decided to investigate, which meant there was only one thing to do. They all went out to the well. Who was really at the well? Would he still be there? Yes, he was still there. And they started talking with this man. Yes, it was indeed the man who talked for God. In fact, it was the Son of God. They never dreamed that God would come to them, a despised people, but he did. Not only did he come to them, he stayed with them for several days. It was a wonderful 2 days they spent with this one who spoke for God. Oh, those people of the other country who despised them would surely be surprised when they heard about this. What joy! But the greatest joy was in the heart of the lonely woman who had had 5 husbands and who was now living with a man who did not love her. Her childhood dream had come true. Who would have ever thought that God would really speak to her? All this time she had thought he did not care. She did not know that he loved her. And indeed, he had loved her more than she had ever dreamed was possible. Now, in my imagination, that's a rendering of the encounter that Jesus had with the woman at the well. When I think about how he interacted with her, that's what I envision. Maybe you can see that. Maybe you can see her in a different way and see a depth to her that you didn't see before. And maybe you will understand that God still speaks to us. And he has encounters with people like you. I don't know what your story is, but Jesus is trying to speak to you through this woman. So that's her story. Now, there's other stories in the book. I'm going to share one more with you. I'm not going to tell you where it's from. It's going to be from the Gospel of John, but I'll read it to you next Wednesday. And you see if you can figure out who Jesus was having an encounter with based on the reading you have in the Gospel of John. If you want more of these stories, you can go. There's a website I have, booksbykerusso.wordpress.com, and you go to the page about the books and you can find out more about this book. But I'll share with you another story next week. And again, I hope you're blessed by it. Feel free to share this story with anybody. Help them to understand this woman. It's a wonderful gem of a story that you have discovered now in your quest in the Gospel of John. You gave me more time than 5 minutes. Thank you very much. I hope it was worth your while. I'll see you on Friday. It'll be 5 minutes that time. 5 minutes with KeRusso. You have a blessed day.